asked who was going to speak on this trip. He asked if I would speak here because I've been doing a lot of study on this, and I said no. And he said, you should do it, and I said no. And so I asked Joel to speak first because I wanted to be sure you got all of the major awesomeness before I got up here. Because I was going to lean more toward the testimony and something that God has been doing in my life that is relevant to here. So thank you, Joel, that was amazing. So I'm going to start by saying, those of you know my story of healing, some of you don't, and when we get to the city of David at the Pool of Shalom, if I'm saying that correct, I'm embarrassed to even say these Hebrew words in front of people who know actually how to say them. But I'm going to give my full testimony because that has been my walk of healing for the past 7 years. But I had suffered Crohn's disease for many, many years, and to date I have received physical healing in my body. But to date, I suffered with emotional illness. I was a wreck emotionally and spiritually, in bondage to anxiety and in fear and panic attacks and those kind of things. And so I had gotten miserable to the point where I felt as though like mom and dad had called me to be a singer and a musician because they saw talent in me when I was a child, but I didn't see the talent in myself. And so therefore I began to resent music, and I resented what I was doing because of fear and bondage. And so coming up on my 7-year anniversary of healing, I had really gotten serious about fasting and praying and asking God to complete what he had done in me. I didn't want to receive just a 90% healing. I wanted 100% of what God had for me. And you know, the number 7 is very significant. It represents perfection, completion, rest, and blessing. And I wanted all of that for me. I didn't want half of those things. And so knowing this coming up on our trip in the year of 2017, I was really fasting. Once again, it was 17. I was coming up on my 7 year of healing that I'm going to go into deeper. And the Lord had told me very strictly to study Naaman, because Naaman also had a skin disorder. And Naaman had to humble himself, and he had to swallow his pride and dip himself 7 times into the Jordan. So earlier that day in the year 2017, we started off at the Garden of Gethsemane, and I knew in my spirit what I was pleading the Lord for. So I got around that old olive tree and I began to pray and ask God. You know, I made sure everybody got their blessing first, and then I got down at this olive tree, and the rocks were embedded in my knees and they were hurting, and I felt agony and I was in pain. And I began to beg the Lord. I said, Lord, please, please take this from me. Take it from me. That's all I could say. Take it from me. The same place that he had to lay his will to his heavenly Father. But I closed my prayer after 5 minutes of just saying, take it from me, Lord, with, but should you choose not to, I will serve you anyway.
Yes, hallelujah.
So praying there, I was dumping myself. I was ridding myself of all of these feelings of resentment that I had towards music. So later that day, we ended up at the Jordan, and I was like, this is perfect. And so everybody went through, and I baptized. I went down 1 time. But I knew my heart was flying that I had to go down 7 times, no matter what it looked like to others. And so I waited once again for everybody to have their turn, and I ran back into the water, and I said, Pastor Greg and John, you got to dunk me 6 more times. And they began to dunk me 1, 2, and I was, you know, just taking your breath. And when I got done after that 6th dunk, it was as if I felt free.
Yeah.
Free because I was obedient to do what God asked me to do, not because the anxiety was gone. So that night I go back to my room. We're staying in Jerusalem, and we know that Jerusalem is probably one of the greatest warfare areas because that is the beginning of warfare. You know, there's so much, I'm not going to explain it right, but you know, there's so many things happening over Jerusalem with warfare and turmoil. So that night I went to bed, and that year I was rooming with my daughter. We tend to room together a lot on this trip. And I went to sleep that night and just feeling so satisfied that I dumped myself at the olive tree, and then I went to the Jordan and I dipped myself 7 times. And so I went to bed that night, and I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and some of you think I'm crazy, but I'm too far into it now to care what you think. So I was sound asleep. And as sure as I'm standing here, my bed began to shake. And there was a gust of wind, and my curtain began to move, and my window was closed. And I sat up like a 2-year-old baby and about cried. And I thought, what am I going to do? What has just happened? And I looked around. It took me 10 or 15 minutes to even get out of bed because the covers came up to my eyes. And I got out of bed and I turned all the lights on. I looked here and I looked there and I looked there, and nothing had been taken, but it felt like something had been taken from me. But I was afraid. But I also knew in the Bible that everywhere that the angel of the Lord appeared, they were sore afraid. Even Mary was afraid when Gabriel came and announced the birth of Jesus. So I began to fast and pray and ask God like never before, show me, Lord, what happened. Show me what happened. And I opened up my Bible, and it fell on John 9, the exact place where God began my healing in 2011. So I said, Lord, I'm listening. So knowing all of this, I was studying and praying, and on the exact week of my 7-year anniversary of healing, we were on a cruise, and I woke up. I had been studying a lot about the brain. I thought, Lord, if you could just reset my mind, I would have my 100% healing. And so we were on this cruise, and I'd been studying a lot about the amygdala and PTSD and all of these things, and I'd been seeing a friend of mine and just helping me how to deal and cope. Sometimes in life, healing is coping because it didn't take you under. And so I woke up, and I had a text message on my phone this particular morning, and it was from my former pastor, and he began to say to me, Becky, the Lord said, whatever it is that you have before him, it is done. Oh, I was like, okay, Lord, my brain. I'm not joking you. Later on that day, I got another text message from a friend of mine, and I don't even know her aunt. She was battling brain cancer. But I had randomly just sent a text to her saying, tell your aunt I'm praying for her. So later on that day, her aunt has brain surgery. And she said, Becky, my aunt wants you to know right now, the only thing she remembered during brain surgery was she saw you praying the whole time. Now, you're not supposed to remember anything when you have surgery, and it could have been your elbow or your toe, and it wouldn't have impacted me, but your brain. She was having brain surgery, and she saw me praying. I was like, okay, God, the first time it's a coincidence, second time I'm listening, the third time's the charm. That night I went to sleep, I fell sound asleep, and I woke up, and I heard the audible voice of God say, healing is found in Daniel 10. Healing is found in Daniel 10. So I immediately go home, and I think, I have my Kindle, but I really want to start at Daniel 1. And I begin to read Daniel, and it changed my life. Daniel 10 is where Archangel Michael appears because he's fasting and praying. And you know, Daniel found favor in the sight of the king because of his visions and his dreams and all of these things. And so I'm sitting here thinking, Lord, Daniel 10, 12, and 13, and it says, well, I got excited. Well, anyway, I don't need that. He appears to him, and in Daniel 10, that's where he says, and Daniel, because you have humbled yourself and you have sought understanding, I have come because of your words. And you see, friend, that is where he dispatched Archangel Michael on his behalf to fight for Daniel. And there's two other places where Archangel Michael is found besides that in the canon of the Bible, and that is in Daniel. Then we find him in Jude where he is contending for the body of Moses. They know that had they found the body of Moses, that they would have probably built a shrine and worshipped him, and that is not what God wanted. And then the third place is in Revelation where he's going to come, well, they say that in Thessalonians he's going to come back, or in Revelation that he's going to come back on the cloud with two witnesses, and they believe that that is when Archangel will fight the last battle, principalities. You know, and Ephesians says that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickednesses in high places. So Paul has been warning us that this is still happening in this generation. Amen. So the hair on my arm began to stand up, and once again I thought, okay, so every night before I go on stage, I would begin to say, and he said to me, Rebecca, from the moment you have humbled yourself, and from the moment you sought understanding, I have come because of your words.
Thank you, God.
And so every night when I would go on stage, I would say, all right, Lord, if you did it for Daniel, you'll do it for me. Right. And from the moment I walk on this stage, would you dispatch your Archangel Michael on my behalf so I can worship you freely?
Yes.
And let me tell you what, it has been empowering to know that God dispatched his mighty angels on our behalf to fight the principalities. Yes. You see, we find ourselves exhausting ourselves fighting battles that God did not intend for us to fight. That is not our gig. That is his gig. You see, when it comes to heaven, we've got the heaven realm, and then we've got the angel realm, and then we've got the human realm. And he's got these angels sitting on the wings. I can pull up scriptures, but I'm just trying to go through this fast. He's got angels sitting in the wings waiting to fight for you, to defend you in battle.
Yes.
But yet we spend all of our time fighting battles we're not supposed to fight when he's got people called to do that. He's got angels called to do that.
Amen.
And boy, I tell you, it's empowering. I'm excited about it. I feel like a preacher. As a matter of fact, it even says in Matthew, do you not know that I have called on my Father for help, and at once he would send me more than 12 armies of legions of angels? Do you know legions is up to 11,000, and you take 11,000 times 12, that is 132,000 angels waiting for us. That's powerful.
Yes, it is.
So here we are. The coolest thing is we know that there's cherubims and all kinds of angels, and I went on about how that Archangel Michael's mentioned. We also know in the canon of the Bible that we read that Gabriel's in there, but we also read of an angel named Lucifer. And Lucifer was also an archangel because he was the prince of what he did. We read about how that Lucifer was over the music in heaven. He was the worship leader in heaven. And he was adorned with gold and many jewels. He was very anointed. He was beguiling and very charming, but in a deceptive way. And he was able to take over 1/3 of heaven and kick them out, creating an offspring of demons and angels.
Yeah.
Okay? Does everybody understand that? That is where we get the offspring of demons and angels. But let's not forget, he only took 1/3 of heaven. We have 2/3 on our side. We have those
Hallelujah.
legions of angels waiting in the wings to fight our battles.
Yes, thank you, God.
So it was very clear to me that, Paul tells us very clearly, do not worship angels. For angels are deity. They are created beings. They are here for a special purpose. And angels are not omnipotent. They're not omnipresent. They're not immutable, unable to change. Only God is. However, they are able to be dispatched to help us. So I want to make that very clear. And according to the apocryphy books, and this is where I got a little nervous, according to apocryphy books, old history like Enoch is history writing, and this is the very place over here where we're getting ready to go where the fallen angels fell from heaven. Okay? Now you understand where I'm going with angels and demons. Mount Hermon is the place where people would gather, like Joel said, and have idol worship, and they would worship false gods. And this is where the fallen angels came, and this is where we got this demon and angel thing. And there's no greater place than in this very place right here that God would say, who do people say that I am? Because they were worshiping these pagan gods. But I got to thinking, the Lord told me in 2018 at the beginning of this trip that we must penetrate the atmosphere with pure worship. And I didn't know what that meant. And it wasn't until I got on my Delta flight from Nashville to New York City that I began to write and write and write. And everything that God had given me since my experience with, I believe, Archangel Michael in Jerusalem last year, that it all became to make sense. This is the place, friends, where we must penetrate the atmosphere with pure worship to the one and true living Messiah and God. That's right.
Hallelujah. Thank you, God.
And this is the thing about it. I have become more aware of my surroundings. I am more aware of the heavenly angels, the host of angels, but I'm also aware of my surrounding, of the demons from hell. And I am finding a new authority. And when he does say that he has given us the keys to the kingdom, he has given us authority. Keys represent authority. Yes. And also, not only that, when you begin to talk about binding and loosing, I wrote this down. I thought this was pretty amazing. If I can find it. To bind and loose is to what does that mean? Hold on. No, I'm going to find it because I think it's really good. So that's what happened when you don't follow your notes.
All good.
Oh, is to forbid something or to allow something. That was the way rabbis used to use in courtrooms. They forbid it or they allowed it. Is to bind and to loose something. And I got to thinking, look at all the things that we allow ourselves to go through because we are doing exactly what Joel said. We are worshiping idols, our cell phones, our spouses, our children, our jobs, our money, instead of worshiping Him. And the one thing that I found is that the only reason why you and I are created, the only reason why the angels were ever created was because God desired worship. And you want to know why your praise is important instead of your sorrow, and why it's important in your darkest, deepest moments to praise God? It's because that's what He created us to do. But we've been so busy fighting the principalities and the powers and the warfare that Paul talked about that we're so distracted that we can't even penetrate the atmosphere with pure worship.
Amen.
Because we're not pure inside. We think we are, but we're not.
Amen. That's good.
Okay.
Hallelujah. Great.
So I just began to think, it's time that we take authority. We take the keys of our own life and we close the gate to some things and stop allowing some things to take over us. And then we open up a new realm of worship from this day forward. Levi, I want you to come get ready. We want to sing the song.